there, 3-5, 3-6, 1-3, or 3-6. You are a third line profile in human design, which means you have the Martyr. That's the name of the line 3. And so in this video, we're going to talk all about what it means to be a line 3, with 2 videos coming up going deeper into the line 3. And I'm going to be interviewing different people with the third line in their profile so that you can really see how they experience it through their own life experience, and therefore illustrate to you what it means versus having, me tell you. So if we haven't met, I'm Karen McMullen. Welcome to my YouTube channel, where I share human design and also channeled guidance from my guides, the Council of Light, to help you get really clear about who you are and what you're here for. One of the main things to take away from your understanding of the martyr, well, if we look at the word martyr, a lot of people don't actually know this word. The biggest martyr in history is Jesus Christ, who gave his life so that other people could thrive. And in a way, that's kind of what the 3 does, in that they are here to have a bunch of experiences and to go through a trial and error process that allows them to become really skilled over time and to learn a lot so that they can then share what they've learned experientially with the rest of us. It's almost like they're the cosmic guinea pigs of the universe, who are testing things, but like with their own bodies and with their own experience in order to help us all out. So the words trial and error are important here. It means that the 3 part of you, the third profile, is here to learn through a trial and error process or an experiential process, like to test things out, to give things a try, to try new things, and then to see what works and what doesn't work.
So trial and error has been, it's the only way I can learn. I have to dive in. I have to dive in. I have to try it on, see how it goes, learn from the experience. And that's how it is. I don't really think that I have any other way to learn.
From a very early age, I was very aware that it was so important for me to have a lot of different experiences and to try things. And that was part of my learning process, that I never really knew how to do anything unless I actually did it and tried it. And most of the time it didn't work out the first time around. So that very much resonated with me. And the trial and error process resonated with me when I first learned about the martyr in my profile, the line 3 in my profile.
The 3 really shows up in my career as an entrepreneur. I'm a very natural risk taker. I love to do new things, try new technology. Like back in the year 2010, when nobody had heard of live streaming, it didn't exist yet, I was like, let's just do a whole live event with a live stream. And it was, the camera people were like, we don't even know if this will work. And we did it. And it was, very interesting. And people were like, what the bleep are you doing? And then now, 10 years later, everybody's doing it, and they don't have to hack it together the way we did. But those are the kinds of examples I'm pretty much always thinking, well, what if? And even if that drops on its head, it's fine. We'll just pick it up and try something new with it. So I will tend to also risk money without too much concern, which is not necessarily a good thing. Like when I was younger, it would be like, you might have wanted to think about that a little more, like the consequences of taking those financial risks. But I really appreciate that I don't really have a caution. I don't have one foot on the brake. My imagination always says, it's like, yep, you could try that. That you could go on ahead. There's nothing stopping you. I'm very free. And so at least I could get to the idea stage with a lot of very different things.
You know, I'm, for example, a fourth line, so I will tend to learn from other people's experiences and then just listen to what they say, which is in fact exactly what's happening right now in my life. Is I have a business mentor who is a 3-5 profile, and she has really innovated like an incredible way of doing business online that's different than what I've seen anyone else doing, and I really resonate with it. But it's truly her own style that she came to through a trial and error process. And, you know, she really has this incredible attitude of always being open to learning from what works and what doesn't work, which makes her very resilient to trying new things, because if something doesn't work out, she's not going to conclude that she's somehow bad, wrong, foolish, stupid, or be really disappointed about it and take herself like down into a deep, dark low. No, she's just going to say, oh, wow, that didn't work. What can I learn from this? What's the gem that I'm going to take from this? And then keep moving forward.
I experienced the trial and error process as something that's actually quite organic and fluid. It's something that I've really learnt over the years to be forgiving with myself around, in that if I don't have a fixed idea of the outcome, it means that I don't tend to be as rigid, and it tends to lend more freedom, more spaciousness to actually really go through the trial and error process without being burdened. I find that it needs to have a certain amount of grace, forgiveness, flexibility, and also be okay with the consequences, you know, because a part of this trial and error really is about, well, what's going to happen? What's going to be the result if I do this? So being okay with the consequences, being okay with what happens on the other side really is a big part of the trial and error process. I've also found over the years is that the older I get, the more, it's like I get daring in some ways, and other ways, how do I explain it? In my earlier years, the trial and error process was really, it had a lot of heat and it had a lot of fire to it, in that it was really a sense of I didn't give a shit about the consequences.
Basically, I am always trying new things. I tend to, even in my hobbies, love to like dabble a little bit of this, you know, stand-up paddleboarding, a little bit of making Japanese food, a little bit of planting in the garden. And I used to be somebody who'd be like, why can't you be the person who's like done Taekwondo for 20 years? That's not really how it's gone. And so trial and error really shows up there. I get bored if I'm not trying something new. I get crabby if I don't have something new to try, something exciting, stimulating, some adventure. So especially like in terms of my physicality, if I've been working a lot, like if I haven't gone out on a day trip or dunked myself in the lake, you know, at least, you know, a couple times a week, that's bad. That's like bad, you know, sad Andrea comes out. So definitely in terms of my mental health and my physical well-being and my sense of life is good, I need to be trying new things all the time, basically.
So the way that you approach learning through life's lessons is so important for the third line. If you find yourself being really hard on yourself when things don't go well, or when they don't go the way that you plan them to go, or when there's like a mistake that happens, and maybe even people are upset at you for things not going as planned, then that's kind of not ideal. As a third line, you really want to have an attitude of openness to learning, experimentation, lightness and levity around what doesn't work. Like, oh, okay, I learned this from that, and moving forward. And I think you'll see that attitude in the interviews, which is really, really refreshing. And it's beautiful because this attitude of learning through mistakes, it helps us all, whether we have a third line as a part of our profile or not. It helps everybody to really see learning for what it ought to be, which is just, it's just a process. And it's a process that can be like really magical, fun, and inspiring because it brings us to something completely unexpected that we never possibly could have predicted.
Yeah, I'm at my best when I know what went wrong. Like, that's some of when I think I can offer most value in my life, and especially at work as a coach. It's like, I like to teach and coach about what can go well, but I can feel myself, it's like, oh, beware of that. You see how that is like that is a trap or a pothole or a bump or something.
In terms of my definition around mistakes and failures, these days, they're not words that I use. In my younger years, absolutely, I used to measure outcomes of my trial and error process based on what other people expected of me, what was normal, what was societally acceptable. And as I've matured over the years, hopefully, there's a lot more graciousness that is a part of this process. And so therefore, there's more of an embodied understanding that there isn't a mistake, there are no failures, that a lot of this is an accumulation of wisdom and really adding to the vault of experience and to my depth and breadth of experience as a human, as a woman. So it's actually meant that I'm a lot more patient and forgiving with others because I don't tend to see others making mistakes or being failures in any way. I think because I needed to go through it myself to fully understand and to fully live this third line characteristic, it's actually softened my view of how I experience others. So it means that, there's so much more compassion and grace and patience if I'm not projecting that onto others because I've already reconciled that within myself.
So if you have a 3 in your line and you learn through failing, you learn through making mistakes, it's probably the only way that you can learn, you're going to have a lot of what appears to be failure in your life. And so what can really keep you going and what has kept me going in that time? First of all, I named one of my companies, It's All Happening. And I named my company that when I was at the lowest of the low moment, where I thought I had totally fucked everything up. There's no way I was going to be able to come back from that. And I got this message that said, it's all happening, Alexis. Just remember, it's all happening. Okay. So I named my company that so I would remember that it's all happening, and I'm just right in the middle of it. And when I look at the spectrum of humanity and the people who have the most, they experienced as well the most failure. It was critically important because what's happening is it's actually expanding your capacity to hold more. Life will only give you what you actually can hold. When you are in those failure moments, it's critically important to remember that the only failure, whatever we think of as failure, would be if you do not learn the lesson of that moment, if you do not recognize that it's just a moment and it's just here for you to learn. And the story isn't over until it's over, and you are creating the story. So if you are creating the story, how is this moment of failure part of the overall big picture story that you're going to look back on one day and get to tell? And how are you going to tell that story in a way that is triumphant? Is your recovery from that failure is the triumphant story that you get to tell. Like, what could be better than that? Because this is what life is, right? I mean, look at any of the people that you look up to and respect and listen to and learn from. They've all got triumphant stories. Well, how can you have a triumphant story if you didn't fail? So let that be the light in the moment of darkness.
I have witnessed some third line profile friends of mine who had really negative experiences as kids in school where their teachers were really hard on them, or maybe they had like a very hard parent who was very perfectionistic and wasn't supportive of them in their trial and error process. And to me, this is just so sad and so devastating, because that attitude of harshness in the learning process gets internalized, and then the third line doesn't grow up with, they've got this kind of not self voice in there that's always putting them down for making mistakes. And that doesn't allow them to really thrive as the third line, because they really need to go headlong into experiences and see for themselves where that experience takes them. And that's how it's meant to be. So if you as you reflect and you take this video in, if you notice that you have ingested a harsh attitude in the learning process, then I would just encourage you to kind of reparent yourself and let go of that conditioning around the learning process, and to notice those voices and that harshness when it comes up, and start to be really kind with yourself. You can create an environment within you that's loving in your learning process, and then the outer world will reflect that to you. That's just one wish I would have for any third line, because I have such an appreciation for the third lines in my life, because I just see the magical mutations and the magical new innovations that they bring. They bring this like joy of life, like the spice of life, the zest for adventure, for newness, for exploration, for innovation, for just going out and having fun and experiencing things and like going for it and being all in. They just, like, at their best, they bring so much to the table that it's very enriching. And of all of the profiles, the 3 is like tends to be the least cautious. And so because of that, they're like, I feel like they're just kind of like bringing everybody out onto the playground. They're just like, hey, come on, like, why wouldn't we try this? Why wouldn't we go to this new place? Why wouldn't we do something fun? Why wouldn't we live? Why wouldn't we like dare to dream and dare for a challenge? And then in that process, create something really cool.
I forget that not everyone is like this, that not everyone looks at a very strange new thing and says, why not? Why not try it? Being a 1-3 in combination, there's something about that it's not just that I'm looking for, what's solid and what's new and pioneering, but that I'm very curious about it. I want to find out more about how to do it. So those two things, come together and make for a very adventurous life.
So I thank you, third line, for your trial and error process and for going for it. there's a lot of good that comes from that. We're going to talk about that in one of the upcoming videos, so please stay tuned for that. I will link it on this page over here, so you can find the next video in the series there as soon as it's created. And please subscribe here, and I will see you again soon here on my channel. Much love.